Welcome to the Cloudlife podcast. This is episode number 22, recorded on Thursday, the 31st of July, 2014. Cloudlife is brought to you by the team at Desynit, a cloud computing consultancy based in Bristol in the southwest of the United Kingdom. My name is Matthew Morris, and I'm joined by my colleague, handstanding, cheeky piggy, secret weapon, Shaun Holmes. How are you, Shaun?
Matt, I'm very well, thank you. I'm still elated from the previous week.
It's been wonderful, isn't it? We're fresh back from Summer of Hacks with a whole Summer of Hacks team. Our hackathon secret weapon, Jess, is here.
Hi, everybody.
And our hackathon codebreaker, Chris, is here.
Hello, Matthew and Shaun. Pleasure to be here.
And we have got a great podcast episode for you. So what's on the podcast this week, Shaun?
So we'll start the Hack Pack podcast with a report back from the Summer of Hack London competition. We've also got a competition as a result of the Summer of Hacks. Matt will be doing the second part of the guest interview with Peter Chittum, and then we'll talk about what's coming up next week.
All right, awesome. I'm looking forward to giving away some of that swag. But first of all, Summer of Hacks, Shaun, who won?
I think we did, Matt.
Yay!
Get you.
Elated.
Oh, what absolutely wonderful weekend. And we still can't believe we won. But that's really secondary to what was an absolutely fabulous event with some great people. Chris, why don't you tell us how did it all go down with the Summer Hacks? You set off here from Bristol on Friday afternoon.
Yeah, straight after a full day's work at Desynit, I set off on the train, a steamy, nice, hot train that has the usual delays, and we were delayed because of Shaun's train that got hit by lightning. And then I arrived on Friday, full of enthusiasm, raring to go. We started off with some great presentations about people who had some ideas about what they wanted to hack up, what they wanted to build, what they wanted to see. And then it was really a case of everybody getting into teams and then trying to build some amazing products and amazing apps.
I got to say, man, that train journey up 5 hours, I had a lot of time to think about what I was entering into. And because I've never really been a part of a hackathon before, I kept thinking, I wonder if this is the right thing to be doing. I wonder if I have any place at this event. Am I going to be bored silly? But I got to admit, once that horrific journey ended and I walked into the room, there were so many friendly, welcoming people from Be My App and from Salesforce. Got my shirt, got a drink, and then started chatting to the crowd. And I must admit, from then onwards, it was just fluid. How about yourself?
Yeah, there was a real buzz there. Even early on, I was probably one of the first dozen people there, and everybody really excited and talking about the ideas that they were going to have, and the music was on, the stage was up there, and like you say, just a really friendly welcome from everybody.
I started off being nervous because I was expecting it to be uber serious, but as it turned out, it was really fun and friendly, and we had 42 pitches in the end, not myself, in total, but some really good things, came out of the pitches.
Yeah, there were 42 in total, including one from both Matthew and Shaun. You had a minute total, that's right, to do your pitch. I think, Shaun, you managed to finish within 36 seconds, though, and even build out a handstand, which was really, really impressive, which got the crowd going even more.
Well, I told Matt I was I was always gonna back his app no matter what because I believed in it. But ultimately, what I didn't want to do is leave and be forgotten. So I had to do something that was going to leave a lasting impression. And I think I did just that.
Yeah, I filmed that and we got it on YouTube. So we'll stick a link in for people to see your acrobatic prowess.
Yeah, it's quite popular. That video's had over 60 hits already. So they're hoping after the podcast it should get another 1,000 at least.
60,000 hits. Okay, so yeah, your guys graciously have agreed to join my team, and the inspiration for the app came from a couple of different places, but one of those was from Jess, who had tripped over at work and had to go to hospital as a result, and it sort of left me thinking, you know what, there must be a better way to record hazards in the workplace and record when accidents happen. So that was the app that we pitched. And we all sat down. By the time all the pitches were done, it was getting on for about 11 o'clock, I think. And we all sat down, grabbed a bit of table. It was so hot in London that night. It was almost tropical, wasn't it? So we had the fans going, and we started to hack it out.
Yes, we did. We started out with the most important bit, the crazy design phase at midnight, which is where you just start drawing blocks after blocks and arrows, linking them together. But once we'd finished that, we actually got straight into it, got stuck in there and coded through the night, which is a first experience for me in one of these kind of events. And I really did enjoy it. And Shaun, you stayed with me the whole way, right?
I did, and I got to admit, it was my first sort of hands-on experience. I mean, I've started life as a COBOL programmer. It was my first hands-on experience of actually watching you guys in sort of full flow. And to get that experience now, it really just opened my eyes to the way this process develops. And it was a fantastic thing to see graphics converting into something that I was playing with. Within a few hours, I was actually playing with the apps and then starting to crit it, which I'm sure you weren't appreciating at 3 a.m.
By about 1 o'clock, I think we tried a few ideas that weren't going to work, and we talked about how big this app should be in its first instance. And I think we made the very sensible choice in the end to keep it as completely small as possible. So we were aiming for like 2 screens. I don't know if I told you this, right, but I got some feedback from the judges on Sunday, and they said, yeah, we sat down for about half an hour and argued whether or not your data model was correct.
I'd love to be a fly on the wall for that argument.
To which I have to say it probably wasn't correct, because we made it up at 3 o'clock in the morning. The thing that I like is I pitched that I reckoned we could build an app with no Apex code. Chris, you didn't agree with me. You're like, Matt, you're going to come to me by about 2 o'clock and say, please build me some code. And
lo and behold, 2 o'clock in the morning, you turn around to me, coffee in hand, and you just go, we're going to need some code to build this, aren't we?
So there was 2 things though. So this app, we wanted to record where the hazard was. So we were going to need a bit of GPS. So we stole and hacked some code out for that. And then Chris, you had this great idea of this clickable body map, and that's something we obviously we couldn't do in Salesforce. So you used a bit of Visualforce.
Yeah, and that the great thing about it was that it translated all that information directly into the model, into the data model, so it could tell you, just by looking at the record afterwards, if they had a head injury. Of course, we had that graphical representation there as well, which showed up, highlighted in red if they had an injured head, but it actually transferred through to the data model without using any Apex. It was all just markup code that, linked really tightly.
That idea of the minimum viable product, we could have done this without using that image. But once we had the basic layout of the program and all that, adding this additional functionality piece by piece meant that the whole time we knew what we could deliver.
So yeah, I mean, I wrote that blog post before we went about why I'm going to Summer of Hacks and why businesses should look at Summer Hacks. And the point I was making was it's all about focus. We were so focused. We were like, okay, here are the features we need. 2 a.m., 3 a.m., 4 a.m. And it just appeared because we didn't get distracted with anything else.
Absolutely. And I even had my wife testing the application while I was sleeping, and she knew what was going on. And I think that's testimony to the simplicity, keeping it simple, sticking to the principle. And it got a bit clunky because Salesforce 1, we've got to bring it to light that it's not quite there yet. There was a few things that didn't quite work the way we wanted them to. But I guess in a hackathon scenario where we were trying not to use code and what have you, it was to be expected.
And I think that was one of the real great strengths of what we did actually build in the end, is a lot of it was native in there in Salesforce 1. And we managed to produce something that was quite simplistic in terms of its nativity, but really simple to use.
Yeah, I mean, I learned so much about what Salesforce 1 out the box can do. I also learned about how it behaves differently on different platforms. So we ended up focusing just on iPhone and testing, make sure everything worked on iPhone, but a little bit of different behavior on Android. So I think we're talking about how really powerful and really productive it was, and as soon as they get these other creases ironed out, I think it is going to be unstoppable.
So Matt, I believe you learned so much that you actually won yet another prize on the day. Tell us about your wireless Beats headphones.
You're very jealous about these, aren't
I'm
you, Shaun?
so gutted, man. I've been looking for wireless headphones for years.
This is what I love about Salesforce, is they just provide the kind of prizes that people like us want. I'm just so happy. And so, so while the hackathon was going on, in order to keep everybody entertained, as if people didn't have enough to do, there was numerous things going on, throughout the day. So there would be things like a selfie challenge where you can getting people to post on social media. There was prizes if you managed to, commit your code to Git on time, and they would do a drawing for that. So
which we won as well, I believe.
We did win one of those. So
wow.
we got some hoodies for the team, and But when it came to the Salesforce 1 trivia on Sunday, I saw the prize and I thought, you know what, I'm going to have a go at this. And it's the first time. I've always sort of sat back in the background at these trivia things, but you know what? I'm like, after everything we've done for the last day or so, I reckon I probably know enough here. And sure enough, my hand was going up like lightning.
I'm gutted. We would have been racing because I would have done everything to win that.
So let's talk about the pitch, though, because the judges were there. The judges turned up on Sunday mid-morning. So just as we were finishing writing the business document that went on the ChallengePost website. So if you want to have a look at all of the submissions and all of the different apps that were built, I think there was about 15 apps that made it through to the end. They're all on the ChallengePost website that was used. So we'll put a link to that. So I was just putting the finishing touches to that when the judges arrived. And took themselves off to the judging room to prepare themselves, and then the pitches started at 2:00 sharp. So 2:30, there we were up on stage, Jess and I delivering the pitch to the judges. Jess, what did we tell them?
We started by telling them a little bit of my story because I'm a chef in Bristol. Last year I had an accident at work, so they recorded the whole thing on a paper book. So when with this app, it made total sense for me because we could record the hazards and the accidents real time as they happen, which is something that hasn't been done before.
And how was it being up on stage in front of the crowd?
It was completely nerve-wracking because you don't have a lot of time to deliver your pitch. I had my eye on the clock the whole time, and then you had to speak and show them through the app. I was worried we were going to run out of time, but it turned out pretty okay, I think.
How long did we have to do this?
3 minutes.
Let me tell you, 3 minutes is no time at all.
Jeez, especially since Salesforce One isn't the fastest application in the world either. So if you started with anything other than the product demonstration, I don't think you were going to get through that.
Well, that was the thing is, I was rushing towards the end and I wanted to show Chris's clickable body diagram, and it was just in the dying seconds that I managed to click that. But I mean, I think again, focus. It was get up, show the app, and Nick Tran, who's one of the directors at the at developer relations at Salesforce, who was basically doing all the hard work running the show. He was up on the mic beforehand, reminding everybody with the magic words, "Show your app," because people were not showing the app enough. That's the only opportunity the judges got to see the app. They didn't get to try it themselves. That all they got was the pitch for people to show it. So there you go. You got 3 minutes. It's all about the focus.
Well, thank you so much, Jess, for stepping in and for helping Matt with the PR photography, bringing the magic. Will you be joining us for the next hackathon?
Oh, absolutely. Count me in.
So we came away with some swag, which we can give away. So we stole some swag items. We have got some limited edition Summer of Hacks t-shirt. Shaun, do you want to tell everybody about them?
Yeah, absolutely. So we'll be tweeting out later today, and we'll have a hashtag, the Cloudlife podcast. And there will be a picture of Peter Chittum. We want to hear what you think he's doing. So it's a caption contest. Send us what you think he's saying or thinking or doing. And next week we'll pick out the winner, and we'll send you a Salesforce Summer of Hacks secret weapon t-shirt. And you can have it any size or color, so long as it's large and black.
Nice. All right, so yeah, we've got Peter Chittum in his Superman pose. So let's have your best caption for that, and we'll pick out 3 winners next week.
Absolutely. So I guess what all that remains for us to do is to say thank you to the organizers at Be My App. Thanks to the Salesforce team, Nick Tran, Adam Seligman, Paul Lee, the whole crew. Personally, I can't say I've ever attended such a well-run event, and I certainly won't forget it, and I certainly want to attend the next one.
Yeah, and I think for everybody that went as well, I mean, there were some absolute standout apps there as well. The one that sticks in my mind is Text Relay. From the guy been deaf since birth, and what he wanted to do was to build an app within Salesforce One that let people type in a message and have it convert into speech on the other end of a phone call, and then somebody would speak into the phone the other end and would come back and put the text on the screen. And when they demoed that in front of the judges, the biggest cheer of the afternoon went off. It was it was just one of those wow moments when technology can do that, but when you see it, it's just awesome.
I thought they would win. When I saw the pitch on Friday evening, I was like, oh my God, that's going to be so tough to beat because, as you say, it's a massive wow moment. But I don't know, Chris, potentially the contest organizers, the rules stated Salesforce One all the way, and I guess the innovation wasn't necessarily a Salesforce One innovation, it was external. But other than that, I mean, the app was fantastic.
Yeah, absolutely. There were a lot of great apps on display, but I think that is the main point about why our app just had that little bit of an X factor. It was completely contained within Salesforce One, and it was based around that technology. So I think that's why we got the edge there. But a lot of great apps out there.
Matt, I also have to give you immense kudos. When I read that the summary for the project at the end, I was thinking this guy put this together after very little sleep and in the dying hours. And honestly, people, go and read this the project brief that we had to submit, the submission entry. It even had links to the actual health and safety, legal documents and whatever. So a man couldn't be more thorough, especially when his brain's not thinking straight. So well done, Matt.
And what are we doing with this app next, Chris?
What we do next? Let's put it on the App Exchange.
Amen, brother. Let's put it on the App Exchange. Share the magic and save a laugh.
All right, that's cool. So that's that Summer of Hacks. Awesome event. So, next time one of those is up, I'm going to one of those, and I would recommend to anybody, absolutely anybody, strangers in the street, I'm telling them, you got to go to a hackathon.
Absolutely. And I think this is a big lesson that to be in a development hack team, you don't have to be a developer, right? I mean, that's the whole point, is that our team was made up of one developer and 3 secret weapons. And I think as long as you've got a good idea and you know the kind of thing you're after, then you can definitely make it happen and win the competition.
And, from the business perspective, I learned from other people as well. And I think that's, it's incredible to be able to walk around to other incredibly intelligent people and just look at their approach, talk to them about how they're going to manage the project. You're just learning all the way. It's by all means, get involved. It's going to help you.
Shaun, upcoming dates for events? Bristol Developer User Group's having a meeting soon. Chris, do you want to tell us about that?
Yeah, that's me, Chris. We're having one on the 13th of August. We've had a few months off. But we're actually going to be telling the complete story of our Summer of Hacks journey, building the app, Team AccidentAlert, and even a tour of and demonstration of the application itself. So if you're around the Southwest and free on the night of the 13th of August, then log into Meetup and come along.
Okay, so on the 27th of August, I know we're jumping a little bit ahead, but August is upon us. Exact Target run an event. The next one is the Bricks and Clicks event. It's in London, and it's on August the 27th. I did try to get to this next event, but Gary snuck in there. This is the Scotland User Group, which will be on the 17th of September. And then, of course, Matt, the big one at the end of the year, everybody's looking forward to.
Everybody's looking forward to Dreamforce.
Dreamforce, amen.
Okay, so that brings us on to the second part of the interview with Peter Coffey that I recorded last month. I had great feedback on the first half. Peter finished up talking about the progress that they've made in terms of helping people understand the benefits of cloud and what Salesforce can do, and he compared it to melting ice.
So shall we hear Peter Coffey?
That is exactly the metaphor that I feel applies to the difference between cloud today and cloud 3 years ago. 3 years ago, I was using an awful lot of my energy to just melt ice. The ice of perceived concerns about security, the ice of unfamiliar development models, the ice of being suspicious of whether a social and collaborative model had any place in the workplace. And those last bits of ice are melting.
And so Salesforce has now broken the back of not only delivering platform as a service technology and all of the associated technologies with that, but you're saying as well, you've now won over, or at least discovered the way in which people are able to understand and comprehend all of these benefits, and you're able to deal with the concerns that they have. If that was a challenge, what do you think of the scale of the challenge which now faces technology companies in terms of educating and enabling customers and consumers with all of this technology around Internet of Things, around mobile devices, around wearables? I mean, you've solved one problem, and now there's another one right in front of us, right?
We are laser focused on the opportunity and the necessity for business, government, education, healthcare, finance, not to adopt leading edge technologies, because that's, in my opinion, the wrong way to define the challenge, but to look at customer behavior and see the next step beyond it. The late Steve Jobs was famous for saying that focus groups won't tell you what the customer needs, only what the customer can imagine having. I don't believe those are the exact words, but his point was that if you go to a focus group, you get incremental evolution of what the customer has now. You might have wound up with a smartphone with a better keyboard. You wouldn't have wound up with a piece of glass with no keyboard. And being able to see beyond the incremental to what the actual goal state should be, and then getting us to that goal state quickly, that I think is a real challenge. And the example I offer is this. If you have Nest thermostat in your home and you have an app to control your thermostat. Well, that's an amusing novelty. When you have dozens of devices in your home, you can't have dozens of apps. You can't spend even 15 or 20 seconds on each of 3 dozen apps in the morning and not feel that that's been a net reduction in your quality of life. You need something that is, if I may, an intelligent container into which all of these apps can plug their data, and increasingly the value will be added by the software that figures out what you would want to know, what you would want to change, what actions you would want to take, and does a really good job of not bothering you with the irrelevant and not suppressing what it turns out you really needed. And this is true at the industrial scale. It's true at the home and safety scale. It's going to be critical to our ability to meet the needs of graying populations in the developed world who need to be able to age in place in their homes because it's just not economically viable to have residential nursing care for the size of the elderly population we're going to have. These are fundamental demographic trends. And George Friedman, not Tom Friedman, who wrote The World is Flat, but George Friedman, who wrote a book called The Next 100 Years, said something that I found tremendously influential in my way of thinking, which is that there are certain things that are not really predictions. Statements about demographics and statements about geography are really not predictions. They're just observations that are going to unfold in certain ways. If you know how many 10-year-olds you have today, you have a pretty good idea of how many 20-year-old young workers you'll have in 10 years. That's not really a prediction. It's a very reliable extrapolation from the present situation. And that, I think, is where we need to be, not designing the next incrementally better version of what we have now, but looking ahead 5 years, 15 years, and saying, what's the environment where we'll be? And we have to be bold about this. There are people who are constantly trying to take a hockey stick exponential improvement curve and imagine something saturating or imagine some threshold being hit and imagine the curve leveling off into an S-curve shape. They generally turn out to be wrong. Generally, the exponential improvement continues longer than they thought it would, and you wind up discovering that Moore's law says processing power per unit cost roughly, and this is a very inexact statement of Moore's law, roughly doubles every 18 months. But connectivity has been doubling much more rapidly than that. And that's why you're going to see more and more things being done by shared resources and people carrying the most minimal of edge devices. I think it was Scott McNeely at Sun who said, really, I don't really want to carry a battery pack, a keyboard, a display, a mass storage unit, and a radio transmitter when all I should have to carry is some kind of token of my identity that tells the room I'm in that it's me, and the ambient environment of displays and other facilities in whatever space I'm in offers me the things I need. Environments like this have been built in an experimental way at places like Xerox PARC. And if you look over the hill to the idea of what's the least possible amount of hardware I can carry other than whatever is necessary to prove my identity to the network, and design toward the zeros and the infinities that implies, and then back off from that as necessary to live within the limits of present technology, you'll have something that's architecturally much closer to what you're going to want 10 years from now, and you won't have to rip it up and start all over again and say, wait a minute, that was a terrible idea. If we had known how connected the world was going to be, we would not have devised email the way we did. We would have built something that was going to be much more amenable to multi-channel, secure, authenticated communications. And I think that's the challenge for us in the industry and also in every business that we serve, is to look beyond incremental improvement of what you do now, take that 60,000-foot view of what's the need you're really meeting, and how would you meet that need if technology could simply get out of the way, and then get to something you can feasibly deliver today, but that has a very straightforward path to what it can be in the next 5 or 10 years.
And you've made reference a couple of times in this conversation, and I remember seeing you at Dreamforce 13. Yours was one of the opening sessions, and you said something which was incredibly direct. You said the revolution has already happened, and I think you were sort of referring to the technologies that we need to solve this problem and this problem and this problem already exist. They may need to be
Sure.
They may need to be further perfected, but all of the things exist. We have enough addresses for enough devices. What do you think in terms of the children who are exiting school today? How different is their thinking going to need to be from you and from I in terms of the way that we view technology and technology's place in our daily lives?
That's a question that has 3 distinct parts. Let me answer them individually. The first point you've made is that to a great extent, this future has already happened. I actually stole that notion from a description in a Tom Clancy book of the process of a terrorist's atomic bomb detonating, in which he spends about 6 pages describing a process that takes a few tens or hundreds of nanoseconds. And then at the end, he says, at this point, everything important that's going to happen has happened. All of the energy that's going to be released has been released. But if you were looking at the exterior of the bomb case, you wouldn't have seen anything yet. All that is left is for the energy to redistribute itself. And that, of course, is very similar to what William Gibson is widely quoted as having said, which is that the future is already here. It's just very unevenly distributed. The connectivity is in place. There's enormous amounts of fiber, and there are increasingly sophisticated ways of using what we at one time very quaintly thought would be the scarce resource of radio spectrum in ways that really do allow us to deliver completely ridiculous amounts of data to pretty much any point on the planet and very soon off the planet. So that connectivity is in place. The processing power is in place. We're carrying around devices that have amounts of processing capability and memory that were once well beyond the upper limit of a high-end engineering workstation. And we're able to put them to work delivering things like video chat to help us clean out the inside of a drill, which is something that we do as one of our Dreamforce demos. The expectation of 24/7 accessibility, not just among friends, but between customers and any kind of product or service provider, that expectation is in place, and it's taking a while for companies and institutions to live up to it. The city of Philadelphia, for example, built what they call a 311 system, 911 being for emergencies, 311 being for everything else that your government does for you. The first generation system was so successful that it almost melted down under the volume of citizen engagement with this access to government resources, and they learned their lesson. And the second generation system is being built now as a fully cloud-based system. So really, it doesn't require an act of futurism to see these things. It's just a matter of looking at the latent energy that's already present in the system and just imagining how it's going to redistribute itself. That's the thing about how I feel about the future. So much of it is already in place. It's like a rock at the top of a hill that's rolling down toward you. It really doesn't take an elaborate calculation to estimate what that rock's going to be doing by the time it gets to the bottom. I actually stole that one from one of the commentaries on The Art of War. Doom Moo once wrote that when a rock rolls down a mountain, it crushes everything in its path, but it's the mountain, not the rock, that really did the work. And that's really where we are, on this mountain of extraordinary connectivity and human expectation of the ability to connect and collaborate. That's what's really going to drive this. You then said something about, well, what does this mean in terms of the next generation, or how they're going to engage with technology? The problem is that I hear people say, oh, these kids are digital natives. They totally understand technology. I built some equipment for my ham radio station when I was in my teens. I had to solder connections, and I had to adjust capacitors, and I had a pretty physical understanding of what was involved. This is not just in the realm of electronics. I have occasionally had to do work under the hood of an automobile and so on. We've done a really good job of sealing up technology in boxes labeled no user service possible. And if you think about it, when you go out to start your automobile in the morning, if you turn the key and nothing happens at all, I think you probably have an immediate thought of, oh, my battery's dead, it's not cranking the engine. Well, if the engine cranks but doesn't catch, I think you would quickly begin to think, okay, I must have a fuel problem. The engine is turning over, but it's not firing, so probably the fuel system is the issue. You're able quickly to penetrate below the topmost level of behavior of the perfectly functioning system and begin to reason about the nature of the problem in a way that will guide your investigations and your remediations to solve that problem. It's almost the essential character of digital systems that they either work perfectly or they don't work at all. It takes a definite engineering commitment to build systems that I'll call resilient systems. And then the other implication is, what are we going to do in terms of educating the workforce that's going to design and build these things? The hardware increasingly is just happening. But someone said just the other day in a Forrester report, wearable devices are all very well. Eventually, they wind up being a single microchip. They wind up being an adhesive patch on your arm that measures your heart rate and blood chemistry. The hardware pretty much, I think Heidegger said in The Origin of the Work of Art, the tool disappears into the function, and that's really where we're going with the hardware. But the ability to understand how to add value to the information the hardware produces, to put it into a useful context and deliver it to people in a way that changes their behavior, that's a combination of engineering, visual arts, psychology, a tremendous number of different and demanding disciplines that are going to go into that. And I think that's what's going to keep us busy for many years to come.
Well, that's inspiring. And there's I just checked, there's only just over 100 days to go now till Dreamforce. And the kind of inspiration that you're describing there, can we expect to be seeing a few things that are going to be eye-popping this year?
We just did our Salesforce One World Tour event in Toronto. Mike Rosenbaum, who runs our platform operation, wanted to put up a slide on the significant announcements we'd made in the time since our previous Toronto event going on about a year ago. And it became kind of a joke because it was a scrolling list in what must have been about a 6-point font. It was a completely overwhelming number of actual new services, new capabilities, new technologies that we brought forward. The most notable being, at this point, probably the Salesforce Wear initiative, where it was not merely ourselves, but also Google, Samsung, ARM, Fitbit, Jawbone, a number of other major providers in the wearable space coming together to say the hardware is here, but the value is in the ability to surface the information, relate the information to other streams of information, and help people gain insight and ultimately guide constructive behavior change. I certainly anticipate that we will improve radically on what was already a huge and very exciting Internet of Things lab environment at Dreamforce in 2013, to have a information on your person in your life experience at Dreamforce 2014 that will be game changing. It will be a moment of arrival for a different way of thinking about how you consume IT. And it's not so much that this is a new world, but it's just the next logical progression. You'll still have situations where you need to be in a room with a wall full of displays for things where you spend hours or days doing something like launch a rocket. There will be desktops with 2 or 3 screens where you're doing something that takes hours at a time, like developing complex software. There will be devices that you pull out to do things that take tens of minutes. That'll be what laptops are for. For single-digit minutes tasks, you'll have tablets for that. For tens of seconds tasks, you'll have your smartphone for that. But the next logical progression is for something I need to find out and understand in a matter of a single-digit number of seconds and immediately take one of 3 possible actions, and that's what your wearable will do for you. And we're seeing how software can really materially assist this. For example, with iOS 8, when Apple announced that, one of the things they showed is the ability to take a text message that asks a question, to figure out syntactically and semantically what are the 2 or 3 choices that appear to be being offered in that message, and then display those as one-tap choices. If someone sends you a message saying, hey, do you want to do dinner or a movie? It could put at the bottom of the screen 2 buttons, dinner, movie, other. And over time, what looks like this overwhelming flood of unstructured data will be aided by machine learning tools to be structured on the fly. The system will say, okay, here's the question that's being asked. It looks as if the options available are these plus other if there's something I'm not understanding here. And the goal, of course, over time is that you tap the other button less and less often. And people ask me, well, how are we going to deal with unstructured information? I say what we're going to do is do something that machines do fairly well, which is to find structure and display that as an aid to the user. And over time, algorithms and processes can get better and better and better at doing this. And that's why I don't give much countenance to people who say we're going to be overwhelmed by this flood of information. We don't have to deal with it just by ourselves. We have machine assistants to deal with it, and that's how we climb this ladder where the information becomes fuel for opportunities instead of just an overwhelming crush of minutia.
Wow, Peter, that's an amazing glimpse of the future. So I think with that, we're out of time. So I want to thank you so much for taking the time to spend with us and give us some insight into some very, very big topics.
It's my great pleasure. Thank you.
So, Shaun, yet more mind-blowing stuff from Peter Coffey. I think when we come back next week, we're going to have to sit down and chew the fat over this one.
Absolutely. Every time I meet with Peter Coffey or hear any of his information, I'm always blown away. There's just no doubting this man's on the cutting edge of thinking.
We're so lucky working in the Salesforce sphere to have somebody like that that's able to explain things to people.
He's got all this information. He just can't wait to tell you and bring you around. Fantastic guy. Thank you so much, Peter Coffey, for coming on the podcast, and we look forward to catching up with you again soon.
So, Shaun, what's coming on the podcast next week?
Next week, we'll bring you some more Salesforce news. There's been a lot happening in Salesforce with new products, and I haven't had a chance to really digest some of the new products they're releasing, so I'll bring you some of the news around that, and there'll be plenty more good stuff.
Jess, thanks so much for coming along to the hackathon and being our pitch-perfect secret weapon, and thanks for coming on the podcast to tell the story. And if people want to get in touch with you, how would they do that?
Yes, they can find me on Twitter @GorgeousGraham.
Chris, thanks for hanging out with us today.
Absolutely no problem. It's always a pleasure to be on the Cloudlife podcast.
So, Chris, if people want to get in touch with you, how would they do that?
They can get in touch via my Twitter handle, which is Chris Allen Lewis, but it's the Welsh spelling, so it's ChrisAllenLewis.
All right. And so, my co-presenter, Shaun, if people are looking to find you, where will you be?
I'm at Shaun Homeless. The links are in the show notes for everybody. Matt, I'm looking forward to seeing the results of the tweet campaign you've just had over the last 2 weeks, because I saw a 600% increase in my Twitter followers, my Twitter interactions. So yours must be stratospheric. And how can people add to this immense activity?
You can follow my never-ending tweets at Matt Morris. And there's plenty of pictures there from the Summer of Hacks. Plenty of other craziness from the selfie competitions.
Great. Well, thank you so much for listening. Please leave us a comment on the Desynit blog or on iTunes, Stitcher, or YouTube. If you want to get in touch with us, all of our contact details on the website. And we'll see you next time.